Well, similar to a lot of populists around the world, for the first few weeks, President Duterte was quite dismissive of the crisis, saying that all is well. Weeks after Wuhan and much of Hubei province was locked down by China, he resisted imposition of travel restrictions on folks coming from China because of his strong relations, personal relations and strategic relations with Beijing. But around middle of the March, he began to sing to a completely different tune. And that's where he decided to impose a very, very strict lockdown. In fact, this is not just an ordinary lockdown. You have military checkpoints sprinkled all across city. In my place, 500 meters north and south, you had different military checkpoints at some point this year. So it was a very, very strict lockdown. And according to the International Monetary Fund, at one point, 75% of economic activity was shut down. That's why after the lockdown, the economy in the Philippines is actually hemorrhaging, and the economy could shrink by up to 7%, the worst performance since the 1980s, the last years of the Marcos dictatorship. And the problem is that even before the relaxation of the lockdown, there was a backlog in terms of mass testing. There were problems with contact tracing. And once there was a little bit of a relaxation of the lockdown, we saw that the situation got out of control once again. So you have the worst of both worlds, a public health crisis, which continues to surge in the wrong direction, and at the same time, economic hemorrhage. And as far as the State of the Nation address was concerned, the only concrete thing that the president said in the right direction was to call on the Congress 4 months into the crisis to finally consolidate a fiscal recovery program, which the government has not yet done, despite the fact that it has been borrowing billions of dollars from international financial institutions.
But overall, you're saying he failed to outline a plan on the virus itself, how to combat it, and also the economic recovery.
Yes, I mean, this is definitely a double whammy. And, President Duterte is known to be quite a popular leader with, net 80% plus approval ratings the last quarter of 2019. But I don't think his numbers are going to be anywhere close to that. So you saw a much more enervated, a much more besieged president. He was very defensive about his decision to keep the lockdown as long as it did. He, in fact, criticized President Trump and the United States for going for relaxation of the lockdown too early. He said that haste can make waste. And he claimed that because of his strict lockdown, he prevented 3.5 million people from getting infected. So essentially, he's playing into worse fears in order to cover up for what many people in the Philippines see as the mismanagement of the crisis on both economic part and balancing that with the public health aspect.
Meanwhile, he's preoccupied with reinstating the death penalty. So why and why now?
This is the thing with President Duterte. Whenever he's under pressure, he tends to revert or regress to the mean. And the mean for President Duterte is his penal populism, meaning emphasis on fighting crimes and drugs. That's what he's comfortable with. That's what he was voted upon. Although his track record is highly questionable, there's no evidence to suggest that, the inflow of drugs into Philippines from places like China has been reduced, nor the number of consumers of drugs. And the problem also with the president is that he's also now using the populist card against the so-called oligarchs or big businessmen who are more liberal-leaning and not on his side. In fact, he started his speech by attacking the Lopez's family who owned the recently shut down ABS-CBN network. And then he ended his speech by once again attacking another major liberal billionaire, the Ayalas, who have not also been on good political terms with him. And he has threatened them, especially in the telecommunications sector, that he could take over their businesses if they don't improve their services. So we see the president using penal populism and some sort of economic populism to cover up for his flailing performance as far as the crisis is concerned. And this is absolutely important because in a year from now, the Philippines is going to move towards the next presidential election. And President Duterte want to make sure that his preferred successor will win in 2022. Otherwise, he could face the wrath, prosecution or political persecution for a lot of enemies that he has made over the past 4 or 5 years, not to mention allegations of widespread human rights violation and potential persecution or prosecution by International Criminal Court and other international bodies.
Richard Heydarian, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.